bridge. Find your seat, fasten your seatbelt, and glance out the window. Stamped on the side of the aircraft is a name you've trusted your entire life. Boeing. A name so familiar that most passengers never even think about it. For decades, Boeing wasn't just a company, it was the company that helped shrink the world, the company that made international travel possible for millions, the company that built some of the most iconic aircraft in history. But today, something feels different. The headlines are no longer about innovation. They're about investigations, safety concerns, production failures, and crisis after crisis. So, how did one of America's greatest engineering companies end up here? To answer that question, we need to go back to a time when Boeing seemed unstoppable. There was a time when Boeing could do almost no wrong. Airlines wanted Boeing aircraft. Pilots wanted to fly Boeing aircraft. Passengers trusted Boeing aircraft. Every new airplane felt like another step into the future. Then came the 747, a machine so ambitious that many believed it would bankrupt the company. Instead, it changed aviation forever. The 747 wasn't just an airplane, it was a symbol of what happened when brilliant engineers were allowed to dream big. And that's what Boeing was known for. Engineers, problem solvers, people obsessed with building the safest and most reliable airplanes in the world. For decades, that philosophy worked, until one decision changed everything. In 1997, Boeing made a decision that barely made the evening news. The company merged with McDonnell Douglas. At first glance, it seemed like a victory. Boeing became bigger, more powerful, more dominant. Wall Street loved it. Investors celebrated. But years later, many people inside the aviation industry would look back at that moment and ask, was this where the story began? Because something slowly started to change. The engineers were no longer the loudest voices in the room. The accountants were. And when that happens inside an aerospace company, the consequences can take years to appear. For a while, nobody noticed. The airplanes kept flying. Passengers kept traveling. Profits kept growing. Everything looked fine. Until Boeing found itself facing a threat it hadn't seen in decades. A rival named Airbus. And in the race to keep up, Boeing made one of the most controversial decisions in its history. The decision that would eventually lead to tragedy. For more than a century, Boeing helped shape the modern world. Millions of people have trusted their lives to aircraft carrying its name. And even today, thousands of brilliant engineers continue working to keep those airplanes flying safely. But that's what makes Boeing's story so fascinating. Because this isn't really a story about airplanes, it's a story about decisions. The small decisions nobody notices, the decisions made in conference rooms, the decisions made under pressure, the decisions that seem harmless at the time, until years later, when the consequences finally arrive. The strange thing about Boeing's crisis is that it didn't happen overnight. No single moment caused it. No single person caused it. It happened slowly. One decision, then another, until one day, the company that once defined engineering excellence found itself fighting to protect its own reputation. And that's what makes this story bigger than Boeing. Because history has shown us something again and again. Great companies rarely collapse because of one catastrophic mistake. They collapse because they stop being the company that made them great in the first place. And perhaps the most important question isn't, can Boeing recover? The real question is, does Boeing still remember what made it successful in the first place? Because somewhere inside those factories, inside those design offices, inside those boardrooms. The future of one of the most important aerospace companies on Earth is being decided right now. And nobody knows how the story ends. Every airplane leaves the ground because thousands of things go right. But it only takes one thing to go wrong for the entire world to notice. Boeing once taught the world how to fly. The question now is whether it can teach itself how to recover. This isn't the end of Boeing's story. It may only be the beginning of its most important chapter. Companies don't fail when they stop making products. They fail when they stop protecting the principles that made those products possible.